How's it going? Today I'm talking about Neon Genesis Evangelion, the original show, the original 1997-95 run, as well as the movie The End of Evangelion. Over the past few days, I've rewatched the show in anticipation of seeing the movie The End of Evangelion in US theaters for, the first time ever. And, well, I mean, just about 4 hours ago, I saw the movie. Basically, a super casual video. I'm not going to be deep diving and really trying to analyze. We will be analyzing, I'll be talking about it, but title suggests this is a casual conversation about Neon Genesis Evangelion. That's the working title. Maybe it might change by the time I actually edit and upload this video. We'll see. I find that on YouTube, especially when people talk about Evangelion, they really focus on detail, analyzing, trying to fully understand it in the best way possible, trying to break everything down. A lot of information and stuff about Eva, when people are just talking about it, tend to be these like longer, pretty winded, complex, almost video essay like stuff. And nothing wrong with those. I think it's amazing that people can figure out and dive so deep into stuff. But I wanted to make, I guess, the opposite of that. I'm just here sharing my thoughts on the show and the movie, my experience with Eva as a franchise, and just more of a very personal account on what Evangelion means to me. Because of that, I, in the comments below, if you would also like to do the same thing, talk about Eva, but maybe more of what it means to you. How has Eva affected you? How do you interpret it? And we can all have a cool, discussion about Eva and whatnot, or comment whatever, Anyways, I've been talking for too long. We're gonna start with this. So I'm starting with my background on Eva, which is like background. What are you, in the military? Nah, but it's more like, I just think it's kind of important to talk about my experiences with Eva, because I think on a base level, Eva is, while having its main themes and story, is a very personal show. What I mean by this is just that what somebody gets out of Eva is going to be so different than what somebody else might get out of Eva. And I hear what you're saying. Well, you could say that for about any show, which is true, but I just feel like Eva is a very all-round show, I guess. I don't know. It's very subjective on what you as a human being are going to get out of it. And I say this to just kind of preface, but basically my history with Eva, I first got into Eva about 3-4 years ago when I was a lot younger, which isn't that long ago, so I don't know what I'm talking about. But basically, when I got into Eva initially, I was just interested in it. I knew about just kind of its legend status among people online, talking about anime and stuff like that. So I was just incredibly infatuated by Eva. I was super interested, and I watched the whole show. I did watch the Netflix dub, so you say, well, you didn't really watch the show then, whatever. And then I watched The End of Evangelion, and I didn't like it. I didn't really like it. When I initially watched it, I thought, wow, this was really boring. It felt kind of repetitive. Shinji's a bitch, the basic stuff. I'd be lying if I didn't say I wasn't influenced by Scam Bully's video on Evangelion. I for sure was influenced by what he said, because I thought it was a very entertaining video. I still do, but part of the reason why I probably wouldn't agree with that video now is I think Eva needs a repeat watch to fully appreciate, and time. But I'll get into that later. And then after I watched the show and The End of Evangelion, I was like, I want to know more. I'm so interested. But I didn't like the show, so I read the manga, and then I also watched the Rebuild movies. But at the time, there's only 3 Rebuild movies, and I still haven't seen the 3+1 or the 4th one. I'd say off the bat, I like the manga a lot, but the manga is written by a completely different author, has nothing to do with Hideki Anno, and the manga was made, it started the year before the show initially released and ended in 2012, because there's just tons of hiatuses and problems with publishing and whatnot. So it takes different ideas from both the rebuilds and the movie and the show and kind of repackages them into a different new story. And Shinji is definitely a bit of a different character in the manga. I think he's a bit more maybe well-rounded, I would describe, more likable as well. I do like the manga more in terms of just telling a very satisfying start to finish story. I think the manga does it a lot better than the original show. I'll say that off the bat. But basically for years I would hate on Eva. Not like this is the worst show ever, but I would just be like, this is super overrated. I even had a project in college where I was talking about why I think it's super overrated. I was like, it's bad, I don't care about the characters, the pacing sucks dick, and it's the characters, so I was just like rambling. But yeah, that's my background on Eva, and that allows me to go into this rewatch of it and just how my thoughts have changed on Eva. Rewatching this was pretty interesting because I did it over like 3 days. It was very fast, mainly because I was putting it off for a while, and then I was like cramming it right before I went to go see the end of Evangelion. And I'll say this right off the bat, I think to fully understand Eva, or at least almost fully understand at least the plot, the actual story and just all the elements of it, 2 watches are required. Now, if you're just trying to get the main theme, like the philosophical stuff, I think 1 watch is fine. But if you're really trying to understand the world, the setting, the kind of elements that are playing into the story, especially with like Seal and Adam and Lilith and all that stuff, I understood it way more on the second listen. They would say stuff, I'd be like, holy shit. It was a lot of all full circle moments throughout the entire second watch. I actually took notes. I was pretty excited for this. I took a bunch of notes. I'm just going to kind of go through the show, and then we'll kind of talk about the movie as well, because I think I'll just say right out the gate, the kind of way the last 3 episodes and also the movie kind of all circle back on each other and intermix is interesting, but I also don't fully understand it. We'll talk about that as well. Basically, I think the show, it feels like it has a bit of an identity crisis. In the first 6 episodes, though, I think there is the setup of Shinji's kind of, I guess, mental problem. I wouldn't say mental problems, more but just like things Shinji is facing in his head, problems he has. It sets up immediately the issue with his father. I mean, Shinji literally pulls up to New Tokyo 3, like, expecting to meet his dad and just, they gotta like play around a Fortnite or something, run some duos, and then now he's in a new city by himself, no friends, forced to do something he hates. Dad doesn't fuck with him, living with somebody he doesn't know, going to school, and that's why I think episode 4 is one of the best episodes in the show, because it makes perfect sense. If Shinji does that, I mean, he's 14. It's just so much change and so little empathy and compassion coming from other people. I mean, who wouldn't like not fuck it? Like you don't want to go through that. And one reason I love episode 4 is just because of the art, and just maybe I'll put some stuff on screen. The art and just the way stuff is shot is so beautiful, and it looks so nice, dude. It's so nice. It's one of the prettiest episodes in the whole show. And just in general of what I've seen. Episode 7 though, the first 6 episodes are pretty good, with Ray 2 and 3. Or no, Ray 1 and 2, which is episode 5 and 6, being also pretty good. Definitely in the first half of the show being one of the more interesting angel conflicts and just whole Ray's thing. I will say though, Ray is kind of handled half-assedly, I feel, because we have all this stuff with Ray in those 2 episodes, and then she's basically just kind of thrown, and then we kind of pick her back up second half of the show, and it's, I don't know, it's a bit weird. That's another main issue I have with Eva. I'll get into that later. We'll talk about that later. Episode 7, it's okay. It shows some stuff with like kind of the upper like nerve people, like Shinji's dad, the professor. Oh, I can't believe I forgot his name. And Ritsuko, I think her name is. Kind of how like they're working and how they like sabotaged it so that more funding goes to Eva and all that. But I will say it is a very, I don't know. I feel like it could have been like the plot of like the first half of an episode. It definitely is the only episode and that's not bad, 1 of 26 in the show, when I was like, this kind of feels like filler. It wasn't a horrible episode, it was just okay in my opinion. Now episode 8 through 11 is when Asuka shows up, and this is for sure the most like monster of the week, kind of more lighthearted, it's almost slice of life-ish that the show ever gets, and it doesn't even get it like, it's not super like, we're not like a Saturday morning cartoon or anything, and it's very short, like monster of the week. So it's only, again, 8 through 11, that's 4 episodes. I did enjoy them though. I think they are good. They do kind of continue to like question and kind of intrigue you with like Kaji pulling up, or with the embryo of Adam and stuff like that. But overall, I think it's just an introduction with Asuka, and kind of just those characters together. It's definitely the most lighthearted the show gets, but I think it's enjoyable. Episode 12, I think, is a very interesting episode because, I mean, overall, it's not like anything that crazy happens. It's just kind of more, it's a bit more serious than what was happening before it. It shows a bit of Masato's personal conflict, but nothing too crazy. But the thing that mainly stood out to me was the whole scene where Shinji's dad and the professor dude were in the South Pole, because they kind of bring up, in my opinion, what I took away from Eva as the main theme, which is this, which I wrote down because I thought it was very relevant. Shinji's dad says, "Yet this is a world that has been purified, purged of all the original sin," when he's referring to the South Pole because it's just a wasteland. But then the professor says, "I'd prefer to a world where people live, no matter how stained with sin," which I feel like just kind of shows, in my opinion, what the conflict is that Shinji has later during Human Instrumentality. It's like, it's kind of the idea of like, what is better? Is it being in this world where there's nothing happens, I'm never sad, I'm never happy, we're all one? Or is it better to thug it out, you feel me? Like, we take the highs with the lows. Even if there's bad, I'd rather be alive type stuff. So I just found that very interesting as a rewatch again, because that's something on the first watch, I probably didn't give a shit about. Now, episode 13 is also an interesting episode because it focuses on Ritsuko, and it also brings up the Magi, or the Magi, or however you say it. It explains it in depth because before this, I want to say the Magi or Magi was mentioned maybe 4 times. It fully explains it, and it gives us an idea on kind of organ technology and the whole personality. I have it written down. Personality transplant OS, which is the way they put like people's personality and minds into machines. That's what Ritsuko's mom did for Magi, and that's what the other character, Asuka's mom, and what's her name? Shinji's mom, Yui, did for Eva 1, and I'll get into that later. I mean, honestly, this is about to just become an episode by episode breakdown almost, because I mean, I wrote notes, but really, second half, once we hit that episode 14, which the first half's the summary, second half we kind of get more information about Seal and the Dead Sea Scrolls and the script, the plan, which is the Dead Sea Scrolls, and we get some like inner thinking of Rei. The second half does mark a bit of a turn. I wouldn't say it's very jarring. Definitely there is a episode very soon that feels like there is definitely a shift in focus. There is definitely a shift towards more philosophical inner workings of the characters' minds from the more larger kind of like government control, people protecting us are actually against us sort of plot. I do think there is a shift in focus. It's not like jarring, but I think it's noticeable. I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. It's there, and you can see it. Episode 15 is kind of a bit all over the place. You get a bunch of stuff about Kaji and like how he's a double agent. We show Seal for the first time, but in their big like, cube form. Asuka and Shinji kiss, which is like maybe you could say that like contributes to Shinji's stuff or whatever. And the Rei like brain lab is shown. I do think the turning point though for the show is episode 16. This is mainly just because they fight, right? Everybody is basically like, we're still keeping up kind of that more like upbeat sort of stuff from episode 8 through 11. And people are like, yo, Shinji, nice sync score, man. You went up 8 in a week. That's really good. And then Asuka's like, what the fuck? Because, Asuka's very annoying. And she's really mad about that. And hers goes down and Shinji's goes up. And because of that, Shinji gets trapped and he basically gets sucked into this angel that's kind of like reading his mind and fucking with him. And it's because of that, I think that's the turning point, because we really get like a good 5 minutes of Shinji, like just his psyche basically. His mom basically saves him. And there's kind of the whole thing about Evas and people are questioning it. But I think the most important thing is just kind of the scene when he's in the train, because it asks the question, is like, it's kind of pre-instrumentality, the same thing though. It's like, are you just gonna like ignore all your problems and just only focus on the happy moments to live your life? And Shinji's like, shit, I might. Episode 17 is kind of like a whatever thing. Basically, like, Gino's like, he's like, I ain't following Seal, I'm different, I'm moving different. The main focus of 17, I think, is on Rei and just kind of growing of emotions in her second body and just more of Asuka's decline. Episode 16, I'd say, is the start of Asuka's mental decline. And we kind of just go like that, and then eventually we go like, right. Episode Toji, Shinji kills Toji, but like not really, but he like also kind of does. Asuka gets curb stomped. That's gotta suck. Episode 19, I wrote a lot. There's a lot of stuff happening. Again, Shinji almost runs away, but then he's like, we're like, we need you And he's like, but is piloting the Ava my like all I am? And that's kind of a main thing that's later on during instrumentality, is kind of Shinji questioning himself. It's like, is the only reason people like me, like am I existing to pilot the Ava, basically. And then we basically get like kind of a full circle, just seeing like how Avas are like monsters and everything. And there's a definitely, like, I'd say around 15, 16, Shinji's like all these connections that he was kind of building the first half that were kind of making him actually happy for once with all his friends, like the people at the school, Asuka, you know, even though Asuka treats him like shit. These are connections with people that he's never had ever in his life, right? Because Shinji's not used to human connection and bonding. So he's finally getting these, and they're beginning to sever, and that's kind of part of the reason why he loses his shit. Anyways, the last few episodes are kind of weird and complicated, but basically, main takeaways, episode like 21 specifically, on a rewatch, so much shit makes sense, because episode 21 is mainly a flashback. 22 is the big one where Asuka just gets like completely wiped out. 23 gets a lot of cool stuff, especially near the end with like how Rei's background and all that. 24 is interesting because Kaworu shows up. Shinji actually experiences human affection and love for the first time, and it's kind of fucked up because then Kaworu's not an angel, but he's also like one of the only people to ever show, maybe the only person to ever show Shinji any bit of like kind of human emotion. So Shinji is like completely fucked up by killing him. It's almost the final straw for Shinji. And part of what makes episode 24 so interesting is that an element of something that I always remembered as the show just literally just not even talking about, that being the black egg, white egg, Adam, Lilith. I just remember the show never explaining that on my first watch. The show does talk about this, but it's very nuanced in terms of it's one line. If you don't know what they're talking about, which if you're watching for the first time is very likely, then you're gonna miss it, because they straight up say, you know, Kaworu keeps referring to Shinji and people as Lilims because they are born from Lilith, and Lilith is from the black egg, so Lilith creates mankind, and then angels are born from Adam, who is born from the white egg, right? But it's said that the black egg, humans are not supposed to be on this planet. It was on accident. So there's not supposed to be both eggs. It was only supposed to be the black egg. But there's something fucked up, and there's the white egg too. This kind of leads into the movie. So, you know, let's talk about, yeah, the end of Evangelion and the final few episodes it's very interesting to see them tied together. For time reasons, I basically ended up watching episode 1 through 24, going and seeing the movie, and then watching the last 2 episodes. So I kind of like doing that though. I felt like I got more from the last 2 episodes doing it that way. By the way, if you saw the end of Evangelion in theaters, let me know what you thought. I thought it was pretty cool to see it in theaters. It was felt like it went by like that, and I was locked in. I really enjoyed it. I did forget though that the questionable scene from Shinji was literally the first scene. I forgot about that. It's really in these last 2 episodes, 3 episodes, and the end of Evangelion that we really have a very focus on Shinji and just the human, I don't know, condition, the human living, I guess. And they're intermixed because it's really weird. I know some people have said like the last 2 episodes are an alternate ending, and then the end of Evangelion's a different ending. Some say it's like it fits in between. It's kind of odd, and I don't really know exactly. It's very clear that the first half at the end of Evangelion is directly after the 24th episode. I mean, the end of the 24th episode literally is like next air, and then it shows like the frames, like kind of like a storyboard of the beginning of the end of Evangelion, which I know is also in the beginning of Death and Rebirth, I think it's called. And the beginning of the end of Evangelion says episode 25 air. The first like 40 minutes are that. But then the second one is called, it says episode 26 after the initial credits scene for the end of Evangelion, the first half. And that's when shit gets weird. Because basically it's like instrumentality starts because Shinji and the Ava series and Rei and Adam and Lilith all get together, and that starts it. And again, that's not like, it's kind of said, but it kind of just happens, so you know, whatever, we roll with it. So on the second to last episode 25 of the show, the first bit of that is obviously in the first half of the end of Evangelion. I'll maybe like try to show like times on screen to try to explain it, because there's a moment where they're interrogating them. That's kind of what they're doing. But then it says instrumentality starts, right? And also because just based off location, you can tell and whatnot. And then for the rest of episode 25 in the show, that is happening probably during instrumentality in the movie, or the end of episode 25 in the show. Shinji's asked the question, similar to kind of what Gino and the other dude, Shinji's dad and the other dude were talking about earlier, where it's like, are you just gonna like, this is your world, like shit sucks, you trapped your soul in here to prevent any harm. Are you gonna change and learn, or do you just want to do this? That's my interpretation, at least. It's more it's not as biased as that. It's basically just like, you have, this is a perfect world, this is your reality where you cannot be harmed, but that's not what the world is. And he's offered the choice. Now I think here maybe different endings, I could see that, because episode 26, just I don't see how it's connected to the end of the movie, the end of Evangelion, in any way. If it is, or if you think it is, explain to me how in the comments. I'm very interested. Episode 26 in the show, I'll start off by talking about that. Probably my favorite episode in the show, even though there is very obvious kind of like, we're running out of fucking money things happening, but very unique as well. And kind of the idea of showing Shinji in another world that, hey, you are a person in this other world, even without the Eva. That's not who you are. You would exist differently if you were in a different universe. And then Shinji kind of realizing it's like, I have to change. I have to change. I have to accept these problems with myself and change, or to live with it. And only then will I be able to find a way. And it's unclear if it's like the world gets back to normal or it's continued instrumentality. I don't really think that matters though. I think it just shows that Shinji finally realized who he is, and he's come to terms with that, and he's ready to go on and be in the world. Now here's the thing. In the end of Evangelion, Shinji's presented with a very similar, if not exactly the same, dilemma. And he basically is like, I want to be in the world. I want to live, because I mean, he says like he remembers the friends and he flashes the pictures and all that, and then they pick it, and this is where I get confused. Honestly, a lot at the end of Evangelion, the movie, the second half, get confused. I think it's very cool visually, had me thinking, and I was hitting the thinker, right? But I was a bit lost, and that's my second time seeing the movie too. I did like it. I kind of like, on a base level, I got what they were talking about. What I meant by I'm lost is I don't understand how what's being said next to our characters, or not our characters, I get that, but how it connects to the story, and like, what is the story here? Like, why is Shinji doing that, and how does that cause that, which causes this? So Shinji picks it, and then it's like instrumentality like stops, I'm assuming, but people are still like not there, they're soup. But then Rei says stuff about how like the human will, if it wants to live, if it fights to live, then the bodies will come out of the soup and they'll gain their form back. And since every human wants to do that, then they'll do it, which is what she kind of implies. But then that doesn't happen, because the final part of the end of Evangelion is, of course, the beach scene. Shinji kind of just seems like hasn't changed in the instrumentality at all. He seems the same. And then it just ends with him choking Asuka and crying and Michiwaru, and, you know, the rest is history, you feel me? I'm just going to talk briefly about the theme of Eva, because I think it's one of the main things that draw people to both the movie and the show. Maybe I look at the show wrong. I think part of the reason why people like the show and the movie so much is simply just because of its strong push of its theme, especially in the second half, and it's less focused on plot and just how wild everything is, especially visually. My interpretation of the theme of Eva is just like, well, what is happiness, and how can we achieve it despite everything seeming like it's trying to prevent us from having it? That's what I would describe the theme is. And that's why I interpret the very end of Evangelion and the very end of the show Evangelion as two alternate endings. Because I think the end of the movie is the bad ending, the not so happy one. Because I think Shinji just kind of falls back into what he was before. He didn't learn, and it just seems like the cycle continues. But at the end of the show, it's very positive. I think it's Shinji, like, he's growing. He realizes it's okay. It's okay, right? Like the dream song. That's part of the reason why I like the manga a lot more, just as a full story, because I think it tackles a similar theme, but the ending is much more satisfying for me as a person. Shinji's presented with the same idea of instrumentality. Like, you like it? And then he just like tells Rei, he thinks about, because Shinji in the manga has more moments placed throughout the manga where he is literally hanging out with all his friends, all the people around him. He's seen smiling, having a good time and whatnot. Shinji is a bit of a different character in the manga. During instrumentality, he's thinking back on those moments, and he just comes to the realization, it's like, I don't want to live in instrumentality. I want to live in the world. Even though there's moments that suck, that I hate, I almost don't want to live. He realizes that there's going to be these great moments that he's going to remember. So it's worth it. It's worth taking the happy and sad times together instead of just nothing, which is what he interprets as instrumentality in the manga. See, this is kind of like, you say, oh, well, I mean, the end of Evangelion's like the exact same thing, pretty much, but I think Shinji has less of a reason to be happy about it, and maybe that makes more sense for the movie. But the thing is like immediately Shinji is like, all right, word, everything is reversed. It goes back and it reverses everything. Nerve, Ava's, none of this stuff ever existed in terms of people's minds. Nobody can think of it. Nobody knows what it is. But the statues and remnants of Ava's are still about, but people don't know what they are. They're kind of like, what the fuck is this? Instead of the constant summer that the world was in before, the world is now in constant winter, which is a super cool contrast. It's the ending I wanted from Ava. And maybe that's a complete, like a selfish, kind of very personal thing, but the manga Evangelion is the Ava I wanted from when I was going into Evangelion. I think the theme of Ava, though, is something that is very admirable, and something that I think they put across very well. Just the interpretations you can have are pretty endless. And that's kind of ties back to what I was saying about it being very personal. Because my interpretation might not be exact, it might be different than yours and whatnot, right? And even if our interpretation was the same, are we going to get the same thing out of it? I don't think so, because everybody's different. And I mean, well, fuck. Isn't that great? Please let me know in the comments below how you interpret the ending of Evangelion, both the movie and the final episodes, and kind of how they mix together, and just exactly what you think it is. Please explain to me how you would interpret especially the last part of the movie, the end of Evangelion, because that's truly the only part that I was really like, what the fuck is happening? Now, I'm just gonna throw in a score, because, you know, why not? Scores are fun. You feel me? This is a casual conversation, so we're not taking it too seriously. I think the show as a base, actually, I don't know. I don't think you can rate these separately. Like you can, but they're really intertwined. But if I had to give the show a base score, I'd probably say an 8 out of 10. Before, I would have probably said like a 3. I think there is still some general problems with the show. I think some of these characters, the switch up of their problems happens instantly. Not for Shinji, but Asuka feels very like dramatic change. It's kind of hinted at, but it seems pretty fast. Rei, as I said before, we kind of focus for the first few episodes, and then we just forget about her till later on, which maybe you could say like, well, that's the point, and it's her character, whatever. And I think also, I just think if you really want to understand the plot, a lot of the main important plot elements, like we're talking integral parts to understanding the setting and the overarching story of Ava, I don't think you're going to understand them on a first watch. Personally speaking, I think if a show is required to watch twice to understand the story, it's not horrible, but I think it says a bit about the story not being the most clear. And obviously you don't want a story to be like, here's all the info, okay, go. You want to be a bit nuanced. But if you're so nuanced that people aren't understanding it at all, I don't know. It's just my personal take. So I think that's a bit odd. I also just think pacing can be a bit odd at times. I was going to mention this before, so I'll mention it now. The thing I wanted to talk about earlier was the budget restraints. I'm mentioning this because a lot of people mentioned that they were losing budget for the last few episodes. That's why there's like frames with Koharu where it's a minute and a half of him literally just holding him. Then there's the whole elevator scene, and then especially the last 2 episodes where, while there is some amazing visuals, especially on the 26th episode, some of the best visuals I've ever seen, there are also just tons of replaying of scenes dubbed over and just kind of random photos thrown in. So a lot of people say it was because of budget restraints. I don't know if that's true, but even so, a lot of times it feels kind of lazy. But you know, it doesn't detract that much from the show. So yeah, probably an 8 out of 10. Now the movie was very interesting. I think it's paced very well. Hour 30. Thank God, that shit went by so fast in the theater, especially theater experience. Pretty good, like a 9 out of 10. I enjoyed it. It was cool to see in the movie theater. The first half obviously is fantastic. Just the animation, the pace of it felt awesome. obviously, if you haven't seen the show, I don't think you'll get anything out of the movie, okay? If you want to watch the end of Evangelion, watch the fucking show, for the love of God, because you're not gonna like the movie. Or you might, but you're really not gonna get as much out of it as you should. Now, the second half, I think the first part talking about where it shows like real life footage and Shinji and instrumentality is interesting. I think just the visuals are fucking insane during a lot of it. But again, I do think it's just kind of, maybe I'm just not that good at interpreting movies or just understanding, but I was a bit lost, dude. In the very end scene specifically, I just didn't understand why we were here and how we got here. So please, if you can explain in the comments, I would love to hear it. I like the movie a lot. I think I would probably also give it an 8 or a 9 out of 10. You need to watch the show to understand the movie. But also, while I really love themes in the movie and how it presents them and the visuals that accompany them, I don't know if I can say I feel like it's presented in the most best way. I feel like it's intentionally just kind of like fucking you over. Maybe that's on purpose. It kind of left me more like, what the fuck? And that's the second watch. Remember, it's the second watch. It's like, we'll watch it more. Yeah, sure, man. I'll sit down and watch an 1.5 hour long movie once a month. The same one. People do that. I don't know why I'm saying like that's anything. But yeah. I'll say because visually, even with the end of Evangelion, visually speaking, I think the most striking, most interesting, any visuals in the entire like original run of the show and movie was episode 26 of the show. There's so many absolutely beautiful, amazing, and just interesting shots. The scene with Shinji and it's all the memories like kind of flowing through him and all the red. The scene where he's in the white space floating around. The scene where they're all just hand-drawn, alternate universe. Everything was perfect, in my opinion. Hello. It is the next day. I watched Eva and recorded the bit of the rest of this video, and I am coming here to talk just because Eva's been on my mind. The themes and just the show in general. I just keep thinking about this day after kind of watching it all and rewatching it and whatnot, right? And I just keep thinking about the themes of Eva, because I mentioned before that I think the general theme is happiness, but at the same time, that's just my interpretation. There's tons of themes about mental health, escapism, family, trauma, and stuff like that. But I think the base of it, it's simply just about people and their problems, mainly mental issues, but not always. And I think the show, part of my issue with the show is how it almost feels like it has a bit of an identity crisis, because I don't know if there's official things from what Anno said about creating the show, but it really feels like the first season, the first half of the show was meant to just be more focused on the story, this whole government plot, seal and all this stuff. But then the second season, Anno was much more focused on not telling a story, but exploring his own thoughts, his own ideas. And Anno is just using the characters in his show as a vessel to explore his own insecurities and problems. And indirectly, this also explores the viewers' problems and insecurities. Because I don't think you can watch Eva and finish the last episode and also the movie The End of Evangelion and not reflect, unless you weren't really like paying attention that much, I guess. But if you were paying attention, then I feel like most people would reflect on themselves. Because while it is berating the characters, I feel like it's very much an extension of Anno questioning himself and his problems and trying to face them. And I think that's probably the main most general theme for Eva, facing your problems. That's kind of the takeaway that I feel like Anno wants to tell us as viewers. But do our characters do that? Do our characters actually face their problems? I think at the end of Evangelion, in the movie, when Shinji strangles Asuka on the beach, I think it's very much showing that he does. And maybe that's supposed to be a telltale sign for us as the viewers to not be like Shinji. But then there's the alternate ending. I feel like it's two different endings in the show where Shinji does fully come to terms and realizes. And that's why I feel like the show is so unique. That's what makes it so special, is the fact that the second half isn't a focused story. That's not the point. The point is Anno is dissecting himself. He's making himself uncomfortable. He's putting his own insecurities, all his problems out on the open via the show. But he's doing it in the guise of I'm just looking at the characters. But when the characters are being berated, they're saying you're insecure for this and this and this. Asuka just puts up walls and is aggressive towards everybody as a defense mechanism. Shinji is passive and relies on everybody, but also doesn't want to talk to anybody as a defense mechanism. All this stuff, it feels like a reflection of Anno being put on the screen. But when the characters are berated like this, it's impossible as a viewer to watch that and not feel, in my opinion, like the show is somewhat talking to you directly. And that's what I think makes the show so powerful, and the movie as well, because the movie almost goes super in depth with this, where it's asking you as a viewer directly, what is reality? What is your reality? What are you running from? What is this human stuff all about? And I think the movie does an excellent job visually of this, and the movie's visuals are fantastic, which I kind of mentioned, but I feel like I might have brushed over a bit yesterday. I think the movie's visuals are incredible. The mixing of real life footage and animation is just mind-blowing, and I do truly love the movie. That being said, though, I think the final episode of Eva show is like my favorite of anything of the original run, just in general, because I just think that's like perfect in my opinion. But yeah, I just feel like I had to add that on because Eva's a show that, while you do kind of get stuff immediately, definitely having this day afterwards of watching all, especially since I watched like 12 episodes of Eva and the movie in the same day, stuff has just been kind of sitting in. It's been sinking in. I've been thinking about it deeply, and I felt like it was important that I just add this. I can talk about it a bit more, or not that it's important. I wanted to talk about it a bit more, and just how I felt like a day after really thinking about what I experienced while watching the show and the movie. So next day, just continued further thoughts after the show came out. Also, I did a bit of more research and was looking into stuff, and I just want to talk about some statements that I remember saying, and this might not go in the video, but yeah. So apparently the reason for the last 2 episodes is for a few, but based on what I found, it's basically they were mainly running out of time and they had to keep a schedule. Money was a bit of the issue, but from what most people say, it's just because the way Anno directs and wrote the story was very episode by episode. The story changed when Anno wanted it to change, and there was no overarching plan. It was just, okay, I feel like doing this now. And it also said that originally Anno really did just want to make a robot show, but then eventually he got into reading philosophy, and he was very interested in it, and it was around episode 16 when he started getting into that, which is directly like what I said earlier, where I feel like the change started at episode 16 with the train scene, and your boy was right, or at least that's from what I found this on, is from this Reddit post, maybe it's on screen or whatever, and say a Reddit post, you're gonna believe that? He links all his sources that with interviews of people, either Anno directly or people who worked with him. Whoever posted this, I think the information is very valid. It also talks about kind of the script and why the end of Evangelion became a movie. But besides that, I just kind of wanted to say some more further thoughts, more extra thoughts. If the extra before was 3.0, this is 3+1, you feel me? I get it. I don't know, I just keep thinking more and more on Eva. I think the reason people like it so much, and I think what makes it so special, is just not because it tells a perfect story or that it's a very consistent or extremely well thought out story, because I don't think it necessarily is. I think it's interesting, but I don't think it's perfect anyway. And I think honestly, if I'm just looking for a good medium with interesting characters, a story, and a very nice overall arcing plot and everything, and a good ending, or satisfying ending, I think the manga of Eva is far better. The reason I believe that so many people like it, why I enjoy it so much, is just I don't think you can watch the final episodes and not have something resonate with you or reflect on yourself a bit. The show is very forward in terms of the fact that it's pretty much asking the viewer directly, what are you insecure about? Why are you insecure about it? And why haven't you done anything to change? Because I think at the end of the day, the other themes are just mainly, it's about human connection. I think besides happiness and escapism, I think it's really about human connection. And I think it's about how much we need it, how hard it is to find, and how hard it always feels to obtain. But then at the same time, I think Anno is telling us that the only way we overcome this issue is when we take our own action. When we don't wait for people to tell us what to do, we don't do things for other people, but we do them ourselves, and we make our own decisions. And then only then are we able to fulfill the thing that makes everybody happy. connecting with others on our own accord, not because of other people. Well, you kind of get what I mean. You know, we're connecting with other people because we want to, and we're doing it because of our own decisions. And again, I think that's my interpretation, and I think other people might agree with me, but that's what makes the show so powerful, is I feel like a lot of people get a lot of different interpretations from the ending. That's why I think the end of Evangelion specifically is almost like a cautionary tale, or maybe a realistic thing, because Shinji sort of realizes this, right? Once he gets his human form back, he falls back into his same old. He's mad at Asuka because she wasn't there for him when he needed him, and then he just does horrible shit, and he just falls back on what he was doing before. Maybe that's a realistic depiction of what people do, where you try to do stuff to better yourself, to aid your own self, make important decisions, and then you just fall back on what you used to do. Maybe that's realistic, depending on who you ask, but I think it's a cautionary tale. I think Anno is quite literally telling you, face your problems, and make decisions from your own self on how to fix them. And I think I finally get why Ava is liked so much. I think at least something about one of these characters, unless you're a flawless human being, something that can be connected with on a deep level that really makes you think about yourself. If you overthink like me, maybe that's why I am so infatuated with Ava, is because I just be overthinking. But it means a lot to me. Ava is something I think I will care about and think about for my entire life. I don't know. It's a show that over the past few days since I finished my rewatch, I've been thinking about constantly. I'm just thinking about its themes and what it was trying to tell me. Maybe that's because I was looking for an answer, but I think that's incredibly powerful, and it's really struck a chord with me. I think it's fantastic. Do I think it's a perfect show? No, but I think its messages and its idea is very cool, especially the philosophy part, and just what Anno is able to achieve is nothing short of like masterpiece, masterwork shit. As a whole though, again, as I said before, I don't think the show's that perfect. And for a better just story that I read and I take in, I'm like, yeah, manga's better. But anyways, Yapatron over here. I originally recorded this outro when I first recorded the main chunk of this video, so before those two kind of extra bits at the end. And I just want to add on that this rewatch, and over the past few days, just kind of contemplating and thinking about what I got from the show and what it means to me, has been very powerful. The show was kind of a rude awakening to me that kind of told me I need to like face some of my own fears. And I think truly when media is able to make you actively think about your own life and change yourself as a person, there's something incredibly powerful about that. And I'm not saying all media has to do it, but I'm glad that Ava did, and I'm eternally grateful. So I guess thank you, Evangelion, I guess. But let me know if you had a similar experience, and as the show says, take care of yourself. And that's my thoughts on Ava. But this is a very disorganized video. This is a pretty all over the place video, just unscripted, which is most of my videos are unscripted, but about my thoughts on Ava, my experiences with Ava, that felt relevant just because with the the first screening of the movie and Evangelion coming to US theaters, I thought it was relevant to talk about. And also because I rewatched the show, which is something I've been wanting to do for a while, but just didn't care enough to actually do. And it was just something I wanted to talk about, because Ava is something that, despite when I initially watched it, not being interested in it, or being interested in it, but not liking the original show, I was still super interested in the series. I don't really know what it is about Ava that I'm always constantly drawn back to it. It's had a hold on me. There's just something about it that always interests me. And I mean, I'm probably gonna reread the manga and rewatch the Rebuild series after this, and I don't know, maybe I'll talk about them or something. But anyways, if you got this far, thank you for watching. I kind of doubt anybody did, but thank you for watching if you did. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please tell me, as I said multiple times in the comments below, your thoughts on Ava, your experiences with it. Did you see the movie in theaters? Do you like the movie? Do you like the Rebuild or the manga more, or do you like them less? And tell me why. But I hope you enjoyed this video. This is very late and I'm very tired. Have a good day, night, morning, which is the same as day, week, month, hour, wherever you are. And yeah.